Hi everyone. I'm very happy to share with you the Four Noble Truths. The origin of the Four Noble Truths comes from Buddhism, and it was originally taught by the Buddha. All right, and historically, the Four Noble Truths were taught to people who had a certain level in terms of spirituality. All right, it's not that it was taught to some people. Some people had the right to the knowledge, and some people didn't have. Okay, it's not exactly like this. It's just that not everyone can actually digest the Four Noble Truth because it's really direct as teaching, and it's really into the face. So as you listen to this podcast, you may feel a lot of resistance as I speak to you. All right. And if I'm speaking to a crowd, I usually tell the crowd that I won't be surprised if one of you actually get up and leave the talk, because it actually hits the ego really fast. All right. It crushes the ego. So a lot of people feel hurt when they hear the Four Noble Truth. Now, why is it called the Four Noble Truth? It's because when you actually listen to it, what happens is it actually shakes your world in a certain way if you're really taking it in and you're digesting it. And it crushes the ego, it kills the ego. And what happens is when that actually happens, you become very humble and you become very noble. And that's why when you listen to the Four Noble Truth, it can hit you really hard, but at the same time, it makes you really humble because you start to look at life from a very, very different way. All right? So I'm going to try to decrypt the Four Noble Truths for you. All right? And I hope that you're ready for the ride. All right? Okay, let's go. So, in the Four Noble Truths, the first truth, which was taught by the Buddha, was that life is suffering. All right? Now, this doesn't necessarily try to look at life from a negative point of view, but at the same time, what the Buddha tried to do is, most people in spirituality, they try to look at everything from a too positive manner. All right? So right now, when I read things online or I hear people talking, they tend to think that everything is peace, love, and light, which is actually nonsense. All right. So if we look at the teaching of the Buddha, it points at this thing. It tells you that life is suffering. All right. So that seems to be like the first punch you get. All right. Life is suffering. But actually, it's not a negative view of life, but it's a very realistic one. Okay, it tells you how things are. All right, life is suffering. Now, let's try to decrypt that. If you're still with me, unless you've paused the podcast and you ran away. So, why is life suffering? Okay, if we analyze it from a rational point of view, let's put aside all your beliefs, what you've been told, the way you've been brought up by your parents, the way you've been educated. Let's put all of that aside and let's look at things from a naked eye point of view. All right. So drop everything, drop your ego, drop your beliefs, drop everything and just listen to what I'm saying. All right. So life is suffering. Why is it suffering? Because you're born with a body, and to put you on earth, your mother had to go through lots of suffering. All right. And giving birth itself is suffering. You get a body, and the body gets sick, which is suffering. You grow up, and as you start to become a teenager or a young adult, you have these conflicting thoughts in your mind, which is a sort of mental suffering as well. You get into a job, all right? And there might be sorts of manipulation at your workplace. There may be backstabbing. There may be jealousy, hatred. So throughout our life, we come across all sorts of suffering, all right? Till you become old, the body gets weak, you get sick again, and you die. So if you look at the lifetime of a person, all right, life is suffering in this way. We're trapped in a body, we're fighting our emotions, we're fighting our thoughts. Living is pain, death is pain, birth is pain, and if you look at the amount of violence outside, wars created by people, manipulation, by the media, by the government, even by your closed ones, it's all a big game of ego. And in that way, life is suffering. All right? So that was the first noble truth, which actually hits you really hard when you listen to it. All right? The second noble truth is that it's actually not a statement. The second noble truth is about the cause of suffering. So what causes suffering? The first cause is desire. All right? Desire, cravings, pleasure, the wanting of material things, the wanting of immortality, the wanting of peace. That's the tricky one. The wanting to be in always a calm state, even that is a sort of desire, all right? Real spirituality is, like I always teach it, is actually getting into the dirt, getting into the hell and being calm in that moment. It's not like being in an isolated place and meditating and being peaceful. That's not true spirituality, not the way I teach it anyway, all right? So the first cause of suffering is desire, cravings, pleasure. Okay. Now, is desire a bad thing? That's what I like teaching about, because that's misinterpreted a lot. And if you look historically, if you go back in the past, you'll see once again people who think that desires are bad, so they would just leave everything, leave the society, leave relationships, and go in an isolated place and go back to the forest, back in India, where they were going to the forest and just meditating. And they dedicated their life to this. Now, is this the right path? I don't think so. All right? Is desire a bad thing? No, it's not. The problem is sometimes we desire something and we actually don't appreciate what we already have. Okay, I'll give you an example, and I'm going to use the analogy of, let's say, driving a car. So let's say you're driving a car, and your desire is to have a bigger car with a bigger engine and with more characteristics into the car. All right, and let's say you do get the other car, and then you desire to have another one. And then you start to see the routine. Whatever we have right now, we want something better. Now, wanting something better is not bad. But the bad thing is, while you want something better, you're not appreciating what you have right now. That's the problem. All right? It's as if I want a kind of life which is more peaceful, where I feel more fulfilled, and that's my drive every day. And really keeps me going. I want something better. I want to improve my life the whole time. And that's not bad. That's, in fact, very essential to keep growing and to keep improving. But the problem is, there are a lot of people who actually don't like their current lives. So right now, I'm the most happy person on earth. I really love what I'm doing right now and everything that is in my life, but I want something better. So the right balance is actually really loving where you are right now and actually trying to be better at the same time. All right? So that's the key thing, and I hope that I've made it quite clear. Okay? So one of the causes of suffering is desire. The second cause is ignorance. Okay? Ignorance that you actually exist as a separate human being, and that's one of the main misconceptions. All right? People think that they exist as a separate human being and they have to create their life and they have to achieve something and be fulfilled, which is not a bad thing once again, but the way people approach it is, I always use the building analogy. I love that analogy. All right. If you want to create the biggest building in town, you either work really hard and create it, or if you want to create the biggest building in town, what a lot of people do, and I see it, I won't say every day, but every few days, is people crush the buildings of others to create the biggest building in town. All right? So that's what we're pointing at here. If you want to be successful, you can't focus on yourself, and that's what hasn't been taught to people. If you want to be successful, you actually need to take care of people around you. Because when you take care of people around you, when you love people more than you love yourself, all right? When you actually do that and you empower others, your life automatically ascends on its own. And that's a magical thing that only few people understand. And it's what I've been doing all my life. And it's something very essential, and people actually don't get it because the rational mind can't get it. But I'll tell you, it's the only way you will feel fulfilled is actually when you're helping your surroundings to actually grow. You actually want people to be better than yourselves. But what happens is that energy that you pour out when you're doing that for people, automatically something happens in your body and you feel really happy. And that's something I can't really explain in a podcast or try to blog it in an article for you to understand. You actually need to do it step by step and actually start doing the things I'm telling you, and you're going to realize how amazing your life actually is. So ignorance can be classified or can be described as someone focusing on the ego, like we just say, focusing on oneself. And the more you focus on oneself, on yourself, again, in a negative way, because it's good to focus on yourself, don't get me wrong. The more you focus on yourself in a negative way, you reinforce a few things like greed, envy, hatred, anger. All these things form from focusing too much on yourself. And once again, I'll take my own example. The more I've helped people in my life, the less stress I've felt. Actually, people who are very, very stressed, they are thinking too much about themselves. They're actually not taking care of others. So the more you actually help people, the more you empower people around you. That could be people in your family, people in your workplace, and you don't need a bloody title to do that, to empower people. I've done that even before I had a freaking title at work. All right. The more you empower people, the more you're going to grow as a human being. And true happiness is being fulfilled, not having a title next to your name, not your bank account or the car you're driving. All right. So let's get that right. So we've gone through the two noble truths. The first one being life is suffering. The second one being the cause of suffering, which we've just described. The third one is the end of suffering. So how do we end suffering? We end suffering by actually looking at things from a non-dual perspective. And the more we do that, the more we attain nirvana, or the more we attain enlightenment, like we say. So what is non-duality? It's actually quite simple. Let's say you come and praise me. I feel very, very happy. My day becomes very smooth. I go home. I'm so pumped. All right. And the next day, someone says something really, really bad about myself. My day is completely bad. So that's actually being dragged by circumstances. All right. If you have a non-dual personality, someone praises you, you say thank you. All right. And the next day, someone tells you bad things, you still say, okay, that's fine. It's not really not accepting feedback, don't get me wrong again. It's actually taking what you think is useful. If someone praises you for something good you've done, okay, fine enough, good. If someone tells bad things on you, you try to analyze it. Is it subjective or is it something you actually did? And if there's something you can take to improve, you do. But you don't put too much importance on it. Now, why? Because these people who praise or hate you or backstab you, they actually know really, really little on you. Think about it. How much do they actually know you? And how much do you know yourself? I'm sure that right now you still don't understand yourself fully. Your mother who gave birth to you doesn't understand yourself fully. So how come you get dragged by what other people tell you? Think about that. The more you give importance to other people's opinions, all right, the more you're going to slow down in life. It's something I've always stuck to, all right, and I still do that. And If you want to take that advice, I would suggest you do